साउंड सिस्टम वालों कितना बैठेगा? चली गई ना?
We can have everybody from outside come in, please, so we can get going, and we'll close the doors. Then we start charging people to come in. So we'll start, and whoever's outside will get going. All right, guys. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the ICAP members UAE chapters event. Something must be good to bring all of you out on a Saturday morning this early, on time, relatively. My apologies for the echo. There's a little bit of an issue with the audio, but I'll try not to shout, which is very difficult for me. My name is Umar Hayat. I'll be the master of the ceremonies today. I'll also be speaking to you a little bit about an area I've worked on, which is on leadership and mindsets and behaviors and all that honey-feely, touchy, non-accounting stuff. We'll talk about in my session. We're very excited. We've got Mr. Rajiv with us. Khurram will be joining us later, and Hiren also. They've got some time where they'll be sharing with you their expertise on the ideas of the future, and change, and innovation, and how to change, and when to change, and all that fun stuff. We do have a structured event for the day, so I will appreciate if we can, while the speakers are speaking, we can keep our phones on silent, and you can just stay in the room as much as possible. It's better for the flow. From a safety and health perspective, of course, we don't have any fire drills planned. So if you do hear a fire alarm, please don't forget me, take me with you. Just follow the green signs, and we'll be outside safely. We'll be starting off in a little bit with the recitation of the Quran. Then we'll have the UAE and the Pakistan national anthem, and then I'll be inviting Irfan to come and say a few words. And then we'll go straight into Rajiv's presentation and events. Then we'll take a break, typically around 10:45ish, probably push it to 11. We'll bring you guys back after the break, and I'll be speaking to you a little bit after Khurram's speech as well. At the end of the day, we'll be having some opportunities to recognize the people who've done a lot of hard work over the past 2 weeks to put this event together. Trust me, it's not an easy venture, so we'll appreciate and recognize them. And then by about 1:30ish or so, we should be taking lunch. We don't want to stand between you and lunch. It's a dangerous place to be. Before we get going, a couple of requests I have for you. Of course, let's try to make these as interactive events as possible. So what I'll be doing is, after each of our speakers speak, we'll be taking about 5 minutes or so for you to reflect a little bit about what they've said. And then I'll have my colleagues walk around a little bit. If you want to have, if you have any comments or questions on what they've said, sometimes the best learning is peer-to-peer learning. Maybe we've got about 2,000 years of leadership experience in this room, about 1,000 just from Rajiv. So we'll have some fun, getting everybody to interact and share your thoughts on what you're seeing in your organizations. How are your organizations evolving and changing? What happens when organizations don't change and evolve? Like Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid says, change or you will be changed. Where is my tech assistant, Mr. Azhar? Highly qualified tech assistant. It's not yet. Perfect tech assistant. So we'll actually get going. If I can have Mr. Khalid Mahmood, if he's here, Mr. Khalid Mahmood. If I can have him come up on the stage, you'll have to give me this mic here, sir. And we'll start with the recitation of the Quran. And then I'll ask you to stand for the UAE and the Pakistan national anthem as well. Mr. Khalid Mahmood for the Quran recitation.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. By time, the mankind is at loss, except those who believe in and do good deeds and keep on advising truth and patience. Sadaqallah al-Azim.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khalid Mahmood. Azhar, if I can just have you come up with me here. And may I please ask everyone to stand for the playing of the UAE national anthem. Please do remain standing afterwards, and we'll play the Pakistan national Have a seat. All right, folks. We will get going with our event today. Again, thank you so much. Thank you so much for all of you for showing up on time, relatively. Like I mentioned to you, we'll make this event a little bit different in the sense that we do hope to see a little bit of participation, engagement from your side. It'll keep the day moving nicely, and obviously give you an opportunity to share your best practices. What have you learned in your organizations? Just to kind of see where you are this morning, the Saturday morning's not too heavy on you. May I please ask you to stand up for one more time, please? May I please ask you to stand up one more time? Let's see how fresh you are. Let's see how many accounting brains we have in this room. Can you find a partner, please? Can you find a partner? Can you find a pair, please? Can you find a pair, please? Can you find a partner? Pair. Pair is two. Partners, find a partner. Find a partner, everybody has a partner. Find a partner. If you don't find a partner, walk to another table, find a partner. Fantastic. Can you face your partner, please? Can you face your partner? Let's see how awake your accounting brains are this morning. Now, please follow my instructions carefully. Here's what we're going to do. So, the way we're going to do this, Rajiv, so you're going to say 1, you're going to say 2, you're going to say 3, and you're going to say 1 again, and then 2, and then 3, and then 1 again. Let's see how quickly you can do this between you guys. 1, 2, 3, back to 1, 2, 3. Let's see how quickly you can do this. Yeah, let's go. Let's start. Keep going.
1, 2, 3, 1.
Okay. Now we take it up one level. So you're going to say 1. You're going to say 2. Now don't say 3. 3 becomes clap. So don't say 3. 3 becomes clap. Let's see how quickly you can do it. Let's go.
1, 2.
Okay. We take it up one level. Let's see how fresh your accounting brains are this morning. You're going to say 1. Now 2. Now 2 becomes clap. 3 becomes stomp, right? So 2 becomes clap, 3 becomes stomp. So 1, 2, 3 becomes stomp. Yalla, let's see how you can do it.
One.
Alright, have a seat. Very nice to see our senior accounting partner say one. Question for you. Why was there a bit of a pause? Why did you have to think before you said something? Why? Why was there a bit of a pause? Why was there a bit of a pause between 1, 2, and you had to think, right?
We are getting maybe you might be asking us to jump from the 9.
Nothing more after this, I promise. So the idea was the moment the brain does something it is not used to, right? So if I got you to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you get on to a million, no problem. But the moment the brain does something it is not used to, that's where you have a bit of a gap and a pause. So for example, if I said to you, Yasir, good morning, how are you? What would you typically say? What would your response be? Fine, thank you, yourself. Even if it was the worst morning of your life and coffee spilled on you and every traffic light was red, I said, good morning, how are you? You would have said, fine, thank you. Because you don't think about the answer, right? It's a taped response. One of the things we're hoping from our session today is we do not get taped responses. That you get a moment to reflect upon how the world is changing. We live in a case study of change and evolution in the UAE. In the next 5 years, remember these statistics. So I was at a conference in Rome, I heard this, I went to go make sure that these the survey and these studies are valid from Stanford and Pew Research. In the next 5 years, 50% of all businesses as you know them now will be extinct. Let me repeat that. 50% of all businesses as we know them now will be extinct. I mean, maybe they won't go bankrupt, but they'll either get acquired or merged, like what's happening to the banking sector in the UAE. A few years ago, a couple of years ago, we were 53 or 54 banks. Today, just around 40 banks, and more change is coming. The winter is coming. Change or you will be changed. How are we going to evolve? The future is now. A fantastic conversation today. One of the big drivers for this change are the millennials. Millennials meaning people born after 1980, right? So like all of us. Right? So millennials, right? GCC numbers are by next year, 40% of all employees and staff will be millennials. Average attention span of a millennial, 8 seconds. Right after 8 seconds, they're like on their phone, all right? How are you going to engage these people? For those of you who are people managers, who manage teams of people, in my session, I'll be specifically focusing on leadership in the new era. We are the first generation in human history that has lived with instant messaging and without instant communication. We've kind of seen both sides. Don't you think that change has had an impact on our relationships? On how we manage our people? One last statistic and I'll get this fund to come up. One last statistic, crazy number. People managers, listen to this. Gulf countries number, GCC numbers. In a recent survey done of 104,000 employees, middle managers, lower level, upper level, across different industries and so on, employee disengagement numbers. 25% of all employees actively disengaged. Meaning like at work, looking for work kind of thing. 25% of people disengaged. They showed up to work. They did enough to keep their jobs. Survival mode. They came to work in the morning, they hung up their jackets, they took out their hearts. And 5 o'clock, they were happy again. Lived for the weekends. 30% of people engaged, so they showed up to work, they put in a good day's work, and were committed. 20% of people super engaged, right? So new project, I'll take it, boss, give it to me, that kind of stuff. How are we going to manage these people? For those of you who are people managers, we're going to have a long conversation today and love to hear from you. What are you doing for employee engagement? And remember, the only constant is change. Tony Robbins says, if you work the same way for 10 years, you haven't worked 10 years, you worked your first year 10 times. Let me repeat that. If you work the same way for 10 years, you haven't worked 10 years, you worked your first year 10 times. Are you working your first year 10 times? how have you evolved? What personal development has taken place over the past 5 years, 10 years? Are you the same person you were before, or have you evolved as your responsibilities have evolved, as the world of accounting has evolved, changed, or you will be changed? So on that extremely positive and optimistic note, I'm going to have Irfan Bashir come and speak a little bit about his team, what they've done to put this event together, and then I'll come back and introduce Rajiv. A big round of applause, please, for Irfan Bashir.
I was not expecting myself to be on the stage when I thought of taking over the managing committee role, because I was always like, I think as managing committee office peers, as we call, as you guys have elected us, the chapter does not belong to managing committee as such, it belongs to all the members. And I always try, that's my at least ambition, to be behind the scenes, let everyone contribute and use the chapter for their benefit. Thank you very much, Omar, for that intro and obviously keeping the audience pumped up. I won't take much time. I won't be the boring factor between you guys and the exciting session that Omar has built up already. And we've got some fantastic speakers here. I can see a lot of familiar faces. Yeah, okay. I can see a lot of familiar faces here. There might be few people that obviously don't know me, so I'll do a very quick intro. I'm Irfan Sheikh. This is my after-day life job, but I work in an international organization. I've been with a big four firm for like 10, 11 years, then I moved to industry. I worked in a German company called Siemens, and then a local group called Algeria Investments, and now I'm currently working in NYU in Saudi. We have, I think on the managing committee, we have other members. So we've got Yasser, maybe Yasser will stand up, and Azhar, I think just moved out. And then we have a couple of members, Asif and Asma, who are unfortunately not here. These 5 managing committee members are elected on, I need to move somewhere else. Okay, these 5 managing committee members have been elected on a 2-year tenure. And then what we have done is we have got our subcommittees or teams, as we call them. These are all of you who have volunteered to work together with us. By the way, we also volunteers. It's all in honorary basis. I've got Azhar here as well. He's our secretary for this year. Something on the mind?
No, no, sure.
So I think I've just got 2 slides just about what the chapter is doing, what we have done recently, and what we plan to do, and how we can strive together with you guys. And like I said, it would be very brief. We have got these 5 themes. One of them I just want to touch upon, which is, I guess, the most important thing in the current. I can speak without mic. Is that probably okay? Yeah, that's turn off. Is it working now? Okay. I like to move around, but anyways. Okay, so I'll just talk about one committee in particular, and I think any members of that committee, I'll also ask them to stand up. The job placement committee. I can see Nafar, Atif, I can see Azhar, etc. What we are trying to do as an example is just to let you know, because often I think we are very bad at explaining what we do. We identify opportunities within our circle. So if anyone picks up a call and says to any of us that there's a job available and they would like to get CVs from our site, we contact our members database either through social media or our database that we have built, and we reach out to them through CVs confidentially. Often you don't get a response like we know in the industry, but we have been successful in a lot of placements, a lot of interviews, and the idea is to encourage more of it. There is one small part of technology that we've implemented in that committee, which is as basic as a Google form. A Google form gives the job poster access to the database, as well as us, the team, which sets it up, and it keeps the name of the organization anonymous if they want to keep it like that. So that gives you a bit of a leeway. And we've got some very senior members here, like Nizar from Antal, and then we've got Loman from Baytop, CFO. I think these guys are obviously pioneers of job placement and industry here. But it's about using the network to maximize engagement with you guys and how perhaps we can work with you guys as well and how we can help our members. I won't go into much about other things, but I would like to thank the event management team who is responsible for all this event management. Hopefully we can make it a success, and working with the senior members and the young members alike. A quick glimpse of what we have been doing. This is our team. Not everyone is in this photo. We have a big team obviously, but these are people from millennials as well as ex-millennials, or pre-millennials. So we have both categories, and we're trying to make a good mix of senior and young members. Anyone who would like to volunteer, work together, we all work in an equal capacity, and we all try to collaborate. Why is UAE important and UAE chapter important? I think we've got this community. We've got like 800 plus people who are registered as UAE members. By registered, I mean you have changed your address in the ICAP portal to say you are living in UAE. There are many members I know personally, both senior and young alike, who have not updated the address, or perhaps are no longer registered because of XYZ reasons. So if you add those, we are looking at like at least 12 to 1300 members, plus associates, people who are not qualified members but are like C intermediates, etc. So you're looking at thousands of community across UAE, people who have come in 70s, like Nafisa, people who have come 80s, 90s, etc., and people who have come recently as well. So we have got a good mix across all the Emirates, and I think it's good to have that diversity and use it to your potential. And I think from an even ICAP and Pakistan side as well, we are the biggest by far overseas, and we would like to use that to leverage back home and use this Dubai and UAE as a hub to collaborate with different organizations and bodies. And that is exactly what we have tried to do in the recent past. So this is just a quick glimpse of what we have been doing over the past year or so. The idea is to work with all the members, both senior members, junior members. There are many people I can see here who came up with initiatives. There are people like Asif Kaleem here, people like Nafisa as well, people like the managing committee members who have come up with ideas and initiatives who have been driven and implemented over the past year. And you can see sponsors as well. We would like to thank them. I think these are both the blue chip and good companies as well as smaller firms as well. And the idea is to give everyone breathing space, and the idea is to let us work together with all of them. We are trying to build more. I think there's always this request to do more, both of the country and for us. And the do more part is what we are trying to do now. The do more part includes some of the basic events that we have planned, and we would need your help in obviously delivering them. These events, I think we already did the start back in June, but we're looking at this event as an example, as a flagship event. We're looking at some technical as well as non-technical events, and we have got something coming up, National Finance Olympiad, in next month as well, which is one of our key events where we can compete as a finance community in both nationally and internationally. And we are looking at a big CFO conference. Hopefully it has not happened for the last couple of years, but with your help, with your cooperation and working together, hopefully we can deliver. And it's not just about these technical, often boring sessions. We try to give some social element to it. So we've got a bit of cricket and sports going on all the time. I think Yasser in particular has been taking a lead, and there are people here who have contributed to that, and thank you very much for that. I think it's about working as a community, integrating both within ourselves and the wider communities of expats living in UAE. Like I said, all ideas and volunteers to join the management activities are welcome. I would only have like last slide, and I know I think it's about time to start the main event. We have just last night sent an email across as well, where we're launching, and I think to deliver these activities that you saw, we need a sustainable structure. Currently, the way it works, it becomes quite ad hoc, and it's difficult to sustain these activities without having the finance behind it, and then reaching out to sponsors belatedly. So we're trying to plan proactively. We've already worked and finalized 7 corporate sponsors for the whole year. That includes 4 different categories. We've got platinum, gold, and then silver and bronze. And we will all give these organizations excellent insights into how they can reach you guys and how you can reach you guys as well. But we also need a membership to be also on the same page and to be also be part of this. And we've launched this local subscription model. We look forward to your feedback. I know there will be a lot of questions and answers. I will not leave this hall after this event until I've answered each of them. I think Azhar and Yasser are here as well, and they are more up to speed last thing, the session today, that's our key outline. This is what you are looking forward to. We are a bit behind the scenes in the sense we should have started our keynote from Rajiv a few minutes back, but I think I'll not take much time and then let's stop that, and I'll ask Omar to come up and introduce Rajiv, and then over to you guys, and thank you very much, and looking forward to working together with all of you. Thank you.
All right, folks, so we'll just get going here. Just to kind of set the stage, and I know I've actually had an experience with working with Rajiv a few years ago, and I think what he'll bring to the session is this idea of the why the change is important and how it's happening. Just to get you in the right frame of mind, just to make sure that we are in the right frame of mind, may I ask you one more time, can I please ask you to stand up, please? Just one more time, can I just ask you to stand up, please? Can you grab your mobile phones? Can you grab your mobile phones, please? With the same partner as you were before, can you kind of pair up with the same partner you were before? Same partner you were before. Let's see how good accountants are. We've seen how good you are with numbers. Let's see how our chartered accountants, CAs, smart people, let's see how good you are in sales, okay, in sales. So here's what you're going to do. I'm going to give you guys, each one of you 1 minute, okay, so you've got 1 minute each, so 1 minute, and then after 1 minute I'll say switch. In that 1 minute, here's what I want you to do. In that 1 minute, I want you to sell your cell phone to your partner. Can you sell it? Let's go, 1 minute. Can you sell your cell phone? How would you do it? How would you do it? Sell it, sell it. Go. 30 seconds, let's go, sell, sell, sell. 20 seconds. 10 seconds. All right, time out, time out, time out. Can you switch, please? Can you switch? The other person trying to sell. The other person trying to sell. Let's go. 1 minute. Switch. 45 seconds. 30 seconds. 15. And stop, 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 stop. Anybody bought the phone? Anybody bought the phone? Anybody didn't buy the phone? Anybody not buy the phone? Can we give yourself a round of applause, please? Well done, well done. Have a seat, have a seat. Question for you, question for you. For those of you who bought or you didn't buy, I just could overhear a lot of people talking about the features and benefits of your phone, right? So people are talking about memory and speed and camera and price. Anybody start the selling process by asking the question, why do you currently have the phone that you do? Why do you currently have the phone you do? Because if imagine they said, for the camera, then you could have spent that 1 minute talking only about the camera and nothing else. Just for a little bit of fun, but when we talk about sales skills and influencing and getting people to do what you want them to do by letting them do things they want to do. Let me repeat that. How do you get people to do what you want them to do? By letting them do things they want to do. That is the art of influencing, and that is the art of leadership. If we're going to change with the times, we've got to ask ourselves the question, why change? Rajiv's going to talk about reimagining the workplace. All I know is our children will work in a completely different work environment than we are working in now. I doubt they'll start their car in the morning, sit in traffic for an hour, wait for the elevator for 20 minutes, go upstairs, repeat the same process again, day after day after day. What will that workplace look like? How will it change? We've got Mr. Rajiv Lalwani with us, partner from Deloitte. Please put your hands together to welcome Mr. Rajiv Lalwani.
This is a piece that I had written about a year back when I was asked by another sort of accounting professional body to write something for them. And the easiest thing for me was to pick up something from Deloitte and regurgitate that material. So I run a small team of machine learning and AI specialists. And what we did was to start looking at the profession itself. And that sort of led me to a journey, and it's kind of moved further in terms of how our profession might change. And I hope I can draw your attention to this change and put you in a reflective mode. That's kind of the objective of this next 30 minutes, which I have 30 minutes over. Yeah, thanks. Look, I think we've all had our moments of what I call it as AI moment. For me, that moment was when someone WhatsApped me. Have you heard of Boston Dynamics as an organization? They sent something called Top Dog. They built something like a machine, or it's called Top Dog. You can YouTube that. It's a four-legged sort of creature. It almost looks like a creature, which they throw. It's a machine actually, but it looks like a creature. They throw it on snow, like a hard snow, and it just kind of starts to walk on the snow. And then it sort of goes through, wades through jungle, goes jumps kind of rocks and all that, and it just almost looks sentient being. It looks like it has life of its own. And for me, that was an AI moment where machines had achieved a degree of self sort of propagation or sentient decision making, which was different. That's not happened before. For some of you, it might be when you speak with Siri or Google Assistant, and we all kind of increasingly have going through these what I call as the AI moments. However, when we look at the, and this is the only thing I'll talk about Deloitte, the rest is all about devoted to the profession and yourselves. Increasingly, we also felt that we are in a strange era of living very digital lives. So we use our phones for everything. I mean, our phones are almost like supercomputers when you look 20 years back. These are powerful machines. We live increasingly digital lives, but our organizational lives are very, very analog. And this kind of division sort of is creating an interesting opportunity for many of us, where Deloitte sort of calls it that we are entering an age of with, where we call it the age of with machines, and the idea that we are going to be better off with machines. So there are, in the media, popular media, you will find two views. One is the dark sort of Terminator-like future, and then the other is utopian. If you hear Elon Musk, for example, that's kind of all utopian, and we will probably colonize space probably, right? So these are kind of two diametrically opposite views. And where I work, and that's a small introduction about me as well, where I work is, I lead Deloitte's, although you said, that things that technology, I've just recently moved over to strategy, analytics, and M&A business. So I lead our strategy analytics business. And the reason Deloitte has done that is it believes that there's something happening in the world which foundationally changes the way organizations need to reflect on their strategy. So look, the important thing, I mean, there's a lot of material out there on the web and you can start to read that. One important metric is that we believe there's a number of studies, and if you project from now to 2030, the projection is that we are going to displace about 400 million people. 400 million people are going to either lose their jobs or get displaced from what they do. And what we are sort of going through, or rather going to go through in the next kind of decade and a half is this massive migration. And that is a cause enough for us to kind of think through as to how we sort of, what are the strategies we develop to kind of respond to this massive migration. But look, we've done this, migration has happened before, it's nothing new. If you look at this, it's a graphic from US labor statistics, and the yellow bar there, which shrinks, is essentially the movement of the x-axis is over time, and the colors are really how the sectors have shrunk or grown. So if you see the yellow bar, it's really the agriculture. So we have actually successfully, as mankind, we have successfully migrated from a largely agricultural society into a service and manufacturing society. And that's a key element. And that should give us confidence that we can change and we can migrate. And this kind of happened over kind of 1920s, and by the 1940s and 50s, we were largely, we entered the industrial age, and we successfully migrated. The wealth has grown, we live in a lot more peaceful time, and so on and so forth. So why is this time different? Why should we even bother about it? That's kind of the next question that comes up. And the reason it is different this time is a lot of this change is exponential. And humans kind of, us, even though we are very numerate people in this hall, we're not naturally inclined to understand exponentials. I don't know how many of you have heard this, the chap who defeated the king in a game of chess, and in exchange he asked for every next square, he wanted to double the grain of rice. And the king very readily agreed to that, thinking that, okay, it could be a couple of bags of rice, which I have to give to this guy. But the reality is, if you start counting from 2, 4, 8, 16, and so on and so forth, by the time you reach, and I did this in the morning, I was sitting and kind of looking at that math, because it doesn't sort of, it doesn't hit you immediately. But by the time you are on the 50th square, you are 10 raised to power 12 plus, or 13 or something like that. And by that time, the numbers start to grow really faster, particularly towards the last squares, last 20 squares, your calculator can't handle the numbers. So exponential, most of our lives, and that's why most of our lives and the way we are born, we're used to kind of more a linear progression. And exponential progression is difficult to fathom. And therefore it's important to understand this key difference than before. The earlier revolutions were more linear, and this time it's exponential. You see that in the evaluation, which don't make sense, right? As accountants, we constantly look at firms being bought out without any revenue. And a lot of my accounting friends ask, Rajiv, this doesn't make sense. It's because of the exponential. The next important difference is convergence. It's not just one thing like AI, but it's the augmentation of a number of things which are disrupting today. And I know you showed blockchain as the next kind of, that might foundationally, a lot of our colleagues spend a lot of time on reconciling. If you look at debits and credits, it was probably invented about, whole body of knowledge in accounting was invented about 400 years back. Interestingly by a mathematician, by the way. And those rules haven't changed, but imagine self-reconciling ledger. you don't need. And the question, why do we need a large amount of work that I do with banks? The amount of reconciliation that banks do is serious. It keeps a lot of people employed. So this emergence is another. I think the impact it will have on various industries. It's a mosaic of industries which are kind of re-looking at things. If you look at lawyers, it's beginning to kind of replace the paralegal professionals there. If you look at the doctors, for example, the ability to carry out disease analysis or diagnostic, machines kind of are doing that better, for example. So that's those are the kind of three reasons I would say. Overall, this means that we will have 400 million people displaced. This total, the impact on the global GDP is being stated as about, in the next 15 years, is $15 trillion of GDP produced by several set of people could be at stake here. The global economy is about $70–80 trillion. So you're looking at a significant piece being either removed, and as you rightly said, that a lot of these organizations may not be there, and that's kind of a reflection, and that's a quantification of what may not be there. Now, when I look at our accounting profession and professionals, there are about roughly 2 million professionals, and these are various accounting bodies. I looked at all the top sort of 10 countries, starting with UK and so on and so forth. There are about 2 million qualified professionals as part of the sort of members of these professional bodies. If you did a rough math of average income, and I took a lower sort of $60,000 per person, that gives you $120 billion at stake in this kind of room or across these rooms across the profession. And I think that should give us enough reason to think about what I call as reimagining profession. So, what does the future of work look like? There's a lot of studies out there in the market. You can download stuff. This particular one I quite like, the McKinsey study, which looks at job and job types and basic job types. And they've broken all the jobs into these foundational job types. And what I've done essentially is we sat down through these job types and started to look at what does it mean in accounting and audit profession. And that should come as a small surprise. In Deloitte, we have plenty of auditors and accountants. So we took this and started to kind of poll. Having taken that, we also asked machine learning chaps to make some predictions based on some data sets that we collected. And the rest of the presentation, I'll show you some of the findings from those. So this is a model which every job type can be broken down into these basic task types. And the question is, how much of these tasks will be replaced? So at the bottom, if you see at the bottom is the repeatable, predictable physical activity. Clearly, if you're driving a car, there's a problem. It's a repeatable activity. Many times I see our Uber drivers, and on one hand, I relish the technology achievements. On the other hand, I do think what's going to happen about these chaps, because machines are going to take over autonomous vehicles, and we're all aware they are going to take over these jobs, and they're just getting used for next training these machines. And we'll talk a little bit. I'll talk about how the machine learning works, how AI works, if time permits. But machines are using humans to learn, and then they can do that better, and therefore displacing a lot of the human repeatable task force. So this is a good map to think what are the elements that in an accountant's job or an auditor or professional job could be replaced. Increasingly, unpredictable physical activities, managing people, interacting with stakeholders, and applying judgment. And I recognize that our profession, a lot of our profession is about estimates, accounting estimates, and applying judgments. So certainly that sort of is going to remain. However, a lot of the stuff that we study this is a difficult exam, by the way. To get here is not easy, and I know that. So a lot of that pedagogy that is out there, we need to kind of start to think about it. Now, there is good news, by the way. This is the job lost, but then there are job gains. There are gains in these activities. And the last kind of shaded area is really the net increase or decrease. So if you see, there is a net increase in the top 3 areas, which is applying expertise in judgment, interacting with stakeholders, and managing and developing people. These are the kind of 3 big areas. Omar, you're set, man. So that's kind of the leadership qualities are going to become even more important. But thinking that we could sit behind a computer and crunch those numbers, we need to kind of rethink, because machines can do that better. And that really is my the first part of my session, which is it should give you enough reason to kind of start thinking that there is something happening down, which is quite deeper, and it's not the same that happened during agricultural sort of transition to industrial economy. And I'm not an expert in sort of, I'm not claiming to be an expert in a profession, but this is a food for thought for all of you to start kind of thinking about it. Now, what we did do as consultants, we are probably good at doing that, is what I did was with a bunch of guys, we started to look at the courseware. How do we produce professional accountants? And we went back to these basic papers and what they learned during pedagogy of the accounting profession, financial reporting, strategic financial management, advanced auditing, professional ethics, corporate laws, and blah, 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 right? I mean, there's a whole list we started trying to look at. And then we found a way to sort of organize this. This is just a way to organize those basic elemental skills that form the profession. On the left-hand side, you will see these little symbols for each type of activity that our profession studies. We started to put some of those little keywords, if you like, and that's nothing but the periodic table of skills. So we said, let's compare it with the periodic table of skills. So every profession in the end, we could, and that's the study we continue there, we said, okay, these are periodic tables of skills, these are basic elemental skills, and a lot of my profession, friends, when I speak with them, they don't actually do everything that's going to be studied here. It's actually quite surprising how little we use what we study, but it grounds us into that profession. Then we started to apply something very interesting. For each element, we said, how much is the job displaced, task is displaced, and how much is this task gained? And that gave us, through the periodic table, an entire set of a model to start looking at accounting and auditing profession with a bunch of skills that we are training our next generation of professionals, and how much of this will get impacted by artificial intelligence, machine learning, and some of the other technologies. Financial reporting is that sort of I don't know how many of you have come across machine learning. So you feed your basic estimates and accounting notes, and it sort of starts to organize itself and gives you a financial reporting pack. Very repeatable. Once you've churned the numbers, you got your trial balance. You start to kind of organize that. Machines can do that very, very well. Strategic financial management, less so, because you're now beginning to look at kind of judgments and so on and so forth. I have deliberately put that 0 or O there. Actually, it's not 0, it's O, which is things that we've not discovered yet, because next 10 years we actually don't know what our children will be doing. There will be new elements which will have to be kind of invented and put there. And that's the job of the current generation, to start thinking about how this periodic table should look like for the next 5 or 10 years from now. Of course, you have auditing, and all of you have started to experience some. I'm told by my audit friends that now drones are beginning to start taking and things like that. So again, the reduction of the human sort of element there. A lot of the physical activity, as you can see, is going away. Management accounting, very numeric, quantitative skills. We pride ourselves in being able to do that. I think we'll have to drop that ego and pride and look at, well, if this machine can do this better, maybe there's something else that we can do. Application of laws. The entire redaction process. I was very fortunate to have an MIT Media Lab guy with me, and he actually worked with Harvard Law. He's gone back because he wanted to write a book, actually, what to go with Big Four. He worked actually with Harvard Law, and machines can take tons of, because you have something called NLP. How many of you have heard of NLP? So that I don't throw these words or three letters at you. So machines can understand natural language, and that's kind of NLP. And therefore they can make sense out of, so when you ask Siri or Google Assistant, what's the capital of Delaware? And it comes up with Dover, and your child for the first time stops relying on you because the child thinks that your machine is much more knowledgeable than you, right? That's another AI moment, by the way, where the child starts kind of saying, my parents don't really know, and this is very foundational, by the way. The young children who are born, they always went to their parents to ask questions, and they thought parents kind of knew everything that's out there. But now they are getting replaced. The parent is getting replaced from a knowledge perspective to the machine. Now, why does it's not the machine? The machine does not know the capital. It has just learned over a period of time through NLP and a number of other techniques. So I think it's extremely important that we look at this, periodic table and start to kind of look at. So we also need to probably unbundle the profession and rebundle it by working with some of the other advances that are happening, which are quite foundational in my view. In the end, we started to kind of reject job lost, job gained. There's a good news and bad news that shouldn't come as a big surprise to you. Almost 50% of what we teach our children now in the profession or what we learned and practice could be taken over by AI. And that should be a sobering sort of thought inside this room. The good news is that we will have significantly higher dollar value. So if you saw that $120 billion being earned by 2 million professional accounting number, that number is significantly going to rise. Of course, as long as we take care of preserving the profession and we just don't lose out for others replacing us. So jobs will gain. We could have another session some other time. I don't have time to take through. This is, we did some analysis, and this is the visual of, so each of those periodic element tables are those circles. So those elemental skills were plotted, if you like, on job gains and job lost. And it started to give us some initial results. And that's the summary I put here of, we believe a number of these jobs will be, and these are some of the analysis. This is both human intelligence as well as data we have taken to look at what could be against the periodic table framework that I presented. What would be the projected net gains, and what could be the, both in quantity as well as value. There is a piece that I'm writing with my colleagues from AI, machine learning chaps, and I'll be happy to share that with you. That'll have a lot more details about our assumptions and how this came about. So I think we should have more interactive conversation for the rest of the morning. But just to conclude, my conclusions are there's a significant part of activities which could be automated and can vary. Some activities almost to 90%, sometimes 100% in my view. But then there are others which are not easy to replace. So the 30, could be 30%. It's important to note new roles will be created, and therefore it's a very exciting new phase. But we can't regurgitate what we've taught our students. Important thing is gains, particularly in dollar value, will be higher. But if we are able to change our profession properly, we could have a much higher sort of dollar value impact. I think when I reflect, I'm kind of over the hill. I can come here and talk, but it's really slightly worrying for the people who are just coming out of the profession now, in the age bracket of 20 and 30. And I think for these people, it's very, very important that A, they understand this stuff, and they're very, very aware, by the way. I think it's people like me who don't use Instagrams. I'll be honest, I don't use, even though I have all these tech sort of things that I've led in the past. I actually don't use Instagram. It's interesting that my daughter knows a lot more about the exponential curve inherently, intuitively, without studying it. She's not a mathematician, by the way, but she inherently knows about exponential than I do, because our lives are very, very analog. When she posts a picture on Instagram, it immediately follows an exponential curve. The number of hits she gets is an exponential curve. Within a very short duration of time, the number of likes or dislikes you get is just exponential. And that exponential experience is a very important kind of element that we need to explore. And that's where I think the millennial part is extremely important. We've got to work with these millennials and give them that purpose as well, right? So, in summary, there are only 3 points I wanted to make. One, for the profession, pedagogical reappropriation. We need to look at our body of knowledge that we study and practice. We may need to kind of reappropriate that. We may need to kind of look at, or at least people in 20 and 30, we may need to look at lifelong learning. Gone are the days that we made that sprint for the final exam, and I know how the CA tests, with kind of so much of knowledge, and it's pretty nervous time. And you think, okay, you've done that sprint and you're done for life, and then you're in this room. I think gone are those days where you could just think of doing that sprint. You'll have to think about lifelong learning. And finally, we've got to go back to our roots. And this guy, I don't know how many of you actually recognize this guy. He's the father of accounting, by the way. He's this Italian guy, Pacquiao. He was the first time who invented. So the trade in Venice was very rich in those times, 1600s, early 1600s. And he invented the double entry accounting system. He was a mathematician, by the way. So really on that note, I'll end my little point of reflection. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajiv. The way we'll make it interactive is actually I'm going to give an opportunity for us to discuss on a table, so you can have a seat, Rajiv, and then we'll keep going in a little bit. Very interestingly, you should get on Instagram. I think you'll have one follower. I'll follow you. Follow me. Very interesting, by the way. Just for some fun, how many people in the world have a Facebook account? In the world, what number? What percent of the world's population has a Facebook account?
2 billion.
There are about 3 billion people on Facebook, right? So 3 billion, half the world's population has a Facebook account. Who's the most followed person on Twitter, by the way? Who's the most followed person on Twitter in the world? Who's the most followed person on Twitter? Take a guess. Trump, not even 70 million. Not even 70 million. Anybody else? Obama actually just beat the top 2 contenders who were there for many, many years. Kim Kardashian. Rajiv, I know you follow her. So Kim Kardashian, obviously, about 125 million. Ronaldo was up there as well. But Obama just took over. Look at this number, okay? 134 million followers for Justin Bieber. I know maybe we've got some people who wonder who that guy is. If you don't know, ask your kids. They'll tell you who he is. Justin Bieber, 134 million. Obama, 130 million. The world's got its priorities straight. Right? So I wanted to just kind of pick up a little bit about what Rajiv said and get you to do some thinking on your tables a little bit. If 3 years ago, I would have stood here and told you that the biggest 3 companies, some of the biggest companies in the world now, wouldn't own anything. So Airbnb wouldn't own any hotels, and Uber wouldn't own any cars, and Amazon wouldn't own anything, even their warehouses they rent. Right? So how would we have believed that? Anybody remember a company called Kodak? Anybody remember a company called Kodak? What happened to Kodak?
It's coming back though.
Well, it's coming back. So it evolved, right? It's funny you mentioned about the AI moment. How about the Kodak moment? In 1997, Kodak owned 87% of the world's market share of film. In 2010, they declared bankruptcy. Why? Why did they declare bankruptcy? Why? When people say digital camera, right? Would you believe that the technology for the digital camera was invented by an engineer at Kodak? But the resistance to change was so high, the resistance to change. Let's just keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Nokia and my Canadian friend, BlackBerry, RIM. I was doing my doctoral work in Waterloo, Ontario, close to RIM's head office, and it's not like they didn't know that Samsung is coming or Apple is coming, but they refuse to change, right? We are the businessman's foe. And business people don't like music. Music is for kids. Social media, it's for businessmen. Nobody cares about customer needs anymore. Nobody cares about customer needs. You want to make a lot of money, focus on customer trends. It's about customer trends. Where will the customer be in 3 to 5 years from now? Wayne Gretzky, the great Canadian hockey player, said, skate to where the puck, that ball, skate to where the puck will be, not to where the puck is. Don't solve for customer needs, you lose out. Solve for customer trends. Some industries notorious for customer needs. Aviation, right? Telecom. Come up with 3G when we want 5G, right? Some industries get stuck. Some professions get stuck. I need a favor from you. On your table, Rajiv's fantastic presentation. Loved how he did the why, the what, the how, Simon Sinek kind of stuff. Fantastic. Why he started with the why. This is important, right? The job losses that might be coming. And by the way, it's in rooms like this and in conferences like these that professionals like you start thinking about what's next. How do we evolve? When trains were running and there were no planes, all of a sudden aeroplanes came, people who worked on the train rail network were out of business, right? We've given examples of how the speed of change is evolving. Rajiv spoke about that effect, what happens when multiple effect happens and things that change rapidly and how quickly they're changing. I need a favor from you, please. On your table, based on some of the things that Rajiv has told us about how AI and artificial intelligence and big data and technology is changing, a couple of questions from you on your table with your colleagues, and then we'll just get a couple of comments if you like. A couple of questions. Number one, for those of you who've been in this world for the past 10 years or so, first question, what has changed in your day-to-day work over the past 10 years? So what are you doing more of, less of, and differently now than you were 10 years ago? And then what do you project, what do you predict you will be doing differently 10 years from now? So 10 years from now, what will be happening? Can we see it? Our eyes see what we allow them to see? What will you talk about? 5 minutes, please, on your table with your colleague. Quick discussion. I'll come back in 5 minutes. What has changed in the past 10 years? What might change in the past 10 years? 5 minutes on your tables. Quick discussion. Over to you. Over to you.
Hi. Nice to see you. A very, very different view of at least if there is an urgency, they can say, okay,
All right, folks, time out. Quick question for you then. Anybody like to share something they discussed on that table? Something that has changed in the past 10 years or so, other than our waistline, anything that's changed in the past 10 years, and what might change in the next 10 years or so? Curious in your profession, in your day-to-day world. Anybody like to share? Anybody like to contribute? We've got a hand up there. Yasser, we're going to have to do some workout here. We've got one mic in the back as well. No problem. Go ahead, sir. What has changed and what might change? You just introduce yourself as well, sir.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Asif Gadid, and Yasser Gadid has handed over me this mic.
How many Gadids are there, man? All these Gadids.
Arshad Gadid is also here.
And welcome to Arshad Gadid from Bearing Chapter.
Thank you, sir.
So, we have, myself and Noman has one point with reference to what has changed in last 10 years and what is going to change in next 10 years. So basically, I think so the importance of real-time data has increased quite significantly in these last 10 years. And what would be the next change in next 10 years? I think so A, B, C, D, which is artificial intelligence, blockchain, cybersecurity, and data analytics. The game will be fully changed. That's what we think.
Fantastic. So much appreciated this idea of big data. Had the opportunity to work with Etihad Airways recently on strategy and leadership. And in my presentation, I'll share with you some of the incredible stuff that they're working on big data, data analytics, and data computation, and so on. That's in my session. Thank you. Anybody else? And no Gadid, please. Somebody else, not Gadid. Go ahead, sir. We'll take your point. Yes, please. Go ahead, sir.
Well, my name is Mohammed Nafis. I will be more generic than the specific. What has changed in the last 10 years? Everything has become digitalized. As you mentioned about the codec first, we have everything digitalized now. We are heading towards a paperless society. Number two is speed of communication. Unbelievable. And what 5G will bring in, we can't even think about it. The revolution with 5G will bring in our life. Number three, paperless society. We are heading for a paperless society, which is a very big change. We don't see now document, we see only online. Everything is available online. In the Chala got it, we don't get a data ledger. If it will be data ledgers, maybe it will weigh 1/10 of the weight of the paper. Everything is paperless now. Online access, everywhere we are having online access. Face recognition technology. Airport, you don't have to show your passport or your ticket, you just walk through. This is the technology which is coming in. And flood of information. So much information is available, and we are even drowned in the information. Everywhere, every direction, you pick up your phone, you have so much information. Google gives you your timeline. Where have you been last 1 month? At what time you were there? What time you were in Karachi? What time you were in Canada? Which restaurant you were eating? So this is frightening. There is nothing privacy left in the life.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Exactly. This idea of everybody knowing where you are. Social media, right? Everybody has a great life except me. Everybody's on vacation except me, kind of mindset. And then obviously what pressure that creates on society. In South Korea, they've done these tests where they've seen children under the age of 8 years spend 5 to 6 hours a day staring at a screen, a computer screen, a TV, a phone. And when these kids were put in play groups, they don't talk. When they give them a pen to write, they say, what is this? We type. So people have forgotten to write. How are these things going to have an impact on our life and the life of our kids? I do want to take one more point. I saw a lot of hands up, but at least want to take one more point. Anybody else, sir? Maybe just one more point. Anybody with a mic? Anybody with a mic? Just one more point. So we'll take one more and we'll push along. Go ahead, sir, right here. You speak loudly enough, yeah.
Yeah, my name is Mustafa. The one thing I think which have changed and is still there is scope is the fintech, where earlier the entrepreneurs and the corporates and the investors actually looking for funding and they're going through the bank and financial institutions. Now they can go like with the fintech and blockchain technology. Those funding is available, the investors and the entrepreneurs. So it's for me, I think, in my view, it will create more jobs because earlier the people who have ideas, they don't have funds and they cannot capitalize on that. Now with the fintech solutions, they can get the investors funding and maybe it's more contribute to the economy of the
Fantastic, Mustafa. So interesting point, GoFundMe and all these pages now, this idea of social funding and instead of going to typical banks and financial institutions and so on, the way things are being funded. One interesting observation also, Peter Drucker said in the 60s, right, the management guru Peter Drucker said, there will be half the number of people doing twice as much work, being 3 times as productive. We are seeing this idea of, this idea of not unemployment, but changing your skill set. I love a point that Rajiv made is kind of going back to the basics, but lifelong learning, right? Whether you look at it from a religious point of view, whether you look at it from a social point of view, it is constant learning. That is what our fitra in Arabic, as they say, the nature that we are built on is constant evolution and constant change. Talking about change, I have changed the schedule a little bit, an agenda change. I do want to get Hiren to speak before the break because it will be very disruptive if people kind of go out and come back in. So if you do allow me to get Hiren to come speak before the break, and I promise we'll take the same time for the break just to catch up on time as well, and then we'll push on with Khurram in my section after. Go ahead, sir, please.
Just to add on,
please.
My name is Sadiq Kaburwal. What I feel is that within 10 years' time, the means of transportation, whether it's bicycles, motorcycles, cars, people will not be buying them. It will come a stage, I mean, like when I was a kid, we used to buy a radio, a watch, or probably you come back with cameras. There are certain sort of segments which do that, but now nobody does that, generally speaking. So the same will apply to bicycles, motorcycles, and cars. And you will find that this particular segment will completely taken away and it will just be provided on a rental basis or something like that. Concept will come about.
Transportation, maybe teleporting, who knows. Just before here, so I'll just kind of set the stage because he'll be talking about this idea of the working with, which is this idea of technology and kind of what Rajiv touched upon. Just one more time, may I please ask you to stand up? May I please ask you to stand up just one more time, please? May I please ask you to stand up? Can you find a partner, please? Can you find a partner? This time we'll do things a little bit differently. Somebody on your table, somebody if you're single, find a partner if you're not loved. Can you put your backs against each other, please? Can you put your backs against each other? Backs against each other. I've tried this in Saudi Arabia, perfectly fine, don't worry, relax, relax. Nothing will happen, relax. Okay, I need your help a little bit, I need your support. When I say go, without looking at your partner, so don't look at your partner, when I say go, I want you to change 3 things about the way you look. Let's go. 30 seconds, change 3 things about the way you look. Let's go. 30 seconds, change 3 things about the way you look. Let's go. 20 seconds, change 3 things about the way you look. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Let's go. 15 seconds, change 3. Nobody take off your pants, please. We want change away from disaster. 10 seconds, please, change 3 things about the way you look. Very good, very good. 5, 3, 2, 1. Can you take a look at your colleague? Can you spot the difference? Can you see the difference?
I can't. I have not seen it properly before.
Question for you. We want change away from disaster. Question people, time out,
then
time
probably
out.
this, right?
How many people took off stuff? Can you raise your hand? How many people took off stuff? Off a jacket, off the watch, off the glasses, off the belt, off the shoe. Almost everyone took off stuff, right? Do you know why? Why? Why do most people take off stuff? I don't know what you do that it's easy for you, sir, to take off stuff, but typically, the reason why most people take off stuff, folks, is because human beings associate the word change with loss. Right? We've done this 1,000 times, asked people to change things. Nobody adds something on their head, something in their mouth, something in their pocket. Most people lose stuff. And what are you all doing now? What are you all doing now? Back the comfort zone, right? Back the comfort zone. Have a seat, have a seat, have a seat. Right? So expensive. So, human beings associate the word change with loss. We're going to change your manager. Oh no. We're going to change your office. We're going to change the software. We're going to, oh no. Change, we assume it to be difficult. It's just different. I cannot emphasize to you enough how much this word agility, right? You know, like these corporate bingo buzzwords, right? If you're sitting in a meeting and you have nothing else to say, throw this word, right? Agility. We should be more agile. What does it mean? I don't know. But like before, it used to be strategy, right? If nothing else works, say we should be more strategic. What does that mean? I don't know. But you know. So if nothing else works, you throw these words around. So delighted to have Hiren, director at Deloitte. He'll be speaking to us about this idea of the future with, which is obviously this future with technology and how it's going to play a part. When he finishes, I will ask you to stay back just for a few minutes. We're going to do the same activity again, and then I promise we'll take a break. Please put your hands together for Hiren from Deloitte.
Okay, so first of all, talking about comfort zone, well, I got my tie, my jacket, didn't get back into the comfort zone, but I do need my glasses to see, so apologies, I had to put them back on. Right? But first of all, I spent the last 16, 17 years doing budgeting, doing forecasting, helping really big CFOs, large companies implement group reporting systems. And really for me, a couple years ago, the AI moment was I was with the CFO of Shell, Jessica Wu, and the CFO of Microsoft, Amy Hood, right? And in this session, Amy was talking about how Microsoft was using AI and machine learning to reduce the amount of time it took her to produce her forecasts. Right? And Microsoft were able to produce a forecast of 100% of their revenue from 2 months to 2 hours. Right? And for them, that was completely ridiculous. And at that time, I realized that actually, what am I doing? You know, I'm still talking about implementing forecasting systems, implementing budgeting systems, taking months to do budgeting. And here's an organization that exists today that is doing things completely differently. Okay, so that's a little bit of a reason why I decided to move into more technology, more AI, and really explore the inner geek within myself. Okay. So, my name is Hiren Amin, and as I've already been introduced, I'm part of our leadership team of strategy, analytics, and M&A. And of course, you can read that on the agenda, no problem. But basically, I'm going to start by showing you a brief video about the age of with and what it means. And then I'm going to talk to you about some stories that I've experienced over the past year and a half within cognitive, within machine learning, and hopefully how you can do and apply these things in your own organizations, or even come and talk to me and we can discuss how some of these technologies can help you in the closing statements. So I'm going to see if the tech works.
The time is now, 0 hour, the turning point, when everything changes, forever. Artificial intelligence is here, and it's ready to get to work. This is what opportunity looks like, and you're here just in time. It may seem challenging, but don't worry. To navigate the endless ocean of data continually changing around us, AI is the map. It's algorithm combined with data to create purpose. It's not human obsolescence, and it's not the uprising of the machines. It's a new age, the age of with, the age of AI working with us. But like any unexplored territory, the way forward isn't always clear. This path hasn't been walked before. At Deloitte, we find the right approach and create the right collaborative framework to help make AI work with you. We have a diversified, interdisciplinary skill set to develop artificial intelligence-enabled solutions and help you build an AI mindset. Together, we will shape an age of with, where human intelligence is aided, enhanced, and augmented with AI, and the potential is limitless. We have used AI to help healthcare and life sciences clients to generate significant value for employees, patients, and health systems through new insights, increased engagement, and seamless automation. In the financial services sector, we have used job-level insights to show how cognitive technologies will impact their workforce over the next 3, 5, and 10 years. And we're helping governments minimize fraud and identity theft by reimagining what is possible with AI. By exploring the impact of artificial intelligence on the way we think, behave, and do business, we bring a unique wealth of experience to help you navigate and explore the promise of the new augmented workforce. The time is now, the age of with. Together, let's make AI our greatest ally.
Okay, so that's part of our global messaging for Age of With, and it's all about the fact that we are now looking at clients about AI, and we're already implementing AI solutions with our clients. We're already solving problems that human beings cannot solve on their own. We're already doing this. We've been doing this for a couple of years already. So I'd like to welcome you all to the Age of With. And like any good consultant, I'm going to start off with some statistics. So this was the CFO survey that I had the pleasure of being a part of in the UK before I came to the Middle East. This was run in early 2009, and we basically surveyed 674 of the largest organizations, CFOs from those companies. An interesting statistic, more than half of the CFOs in some way are engaged in implementing AI already. More than half. But 77% of organizations are not using any cognitive tools. Well, what does that mean? How can more than half of the organizations be looking at AI, but 77% don't know what cognitive means? Well, I want to make sure that you guys are not part of that 77%. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes just explaining to you what cognitive is and how in our profession we can use cognitive in order to implement AI solutions and help ourselves to save more time, unlocking time to do other things where we can be more productive and have more fun in our everyday lives. So, what is my guide to cognitive tech? So I've kept this at a very high level. We can go down into a very technical level if you like, but I'm going to first start off with a simple test. So, interactive, right? This is my version of interactive, Okay, maybe not as fun as the previous version, but okay, this is a test. So what is cognitive? In this room, what do you guys think cognitive is? Is it A, the next big thing? Is it B, a word that people like myself use too often? Or is it C, the future of the profession? Or is it D, all of the above? So if you think it's A, put your hand up. Okay, we've got one person for A. And B, a word that's used too many times. We've got 3. And the future of finance, which is C. Okay, we've got about 6, 7 hands. And then D, all of the above. Okay, and I think the majority of us have got the right answer, which is D. But, you know, like any good children's party, if you chose A, B, or C, you know, you were in a subset of the winning option, so don't feel like you didn't get the right answer, right? It was the correct answer also. So machines have been around for centuries, right? And it's only in the past few decades that we can start thinking of them as intelligent. And these smart machines are driven by computer code, right? We call these cognitive technologies, and they could eventually drive, you know, your business, and they are driving other businesses around the world. So cognitive means to do things in a similar way as human beings. Now that means grinding through data, carrying out tasks, delivering reports, listening, interpreting, speaking, analyzing. The smartest ones also learn, right? And with enough data and processing power, cognitive technologies can do anything that people can do. So when I talk about people, who are the people I'm talking about? Well, what do people in finance actually do, right? And I've had the pleasure of sitting on the outside, looking into the inside for a number of years, and so I've made some observations, right? Now, I will ask you to make sure my observations are correct. So do we spend time learning in finance? Yes. Do we worry a lot? Who here worries in their job? There's a few people who are worried. Okay. You make judgments, you remember things. Hopefully we all remember things in our jobs. We speak in our jobs. Who does comparisons of things in their jobs? A lot of people, right? Reading, listening. Hopefully you do a lot of persuasion, persuading your juniors, persuading your seniors, persuading externals that your organization is fantastic. And of course, in finance we always are friendly, and hence we always greet people as part of our job, right? So smart machines are already doing these things in finance, and in a few years they'll be delivering all of these capabilities, not just greeting people. So, what are some of the practical things that cognitive tools are doing today in organizations? Well, first of all, I'm going to use the buzzword machine learning, right? So machine learning, of course, is part of cognitive. But actually, I thought machine learning is probably something you should understand a little bit more in detail. So I am going to go through this later on in a separate session. But robotic cognitive automation, this is about automating things using fancy macros. Who's used VBA here? Let's see, how old school are we? VBA, Microsoft VBA? Excel? We've got one. Who uses Excel here? Right, that's more like it, right? And who is using macros in Excel? Okay, so RPA, fancy macros, that is the answer, okay? So if you do things multiple times, RPA, that is a solution that you can implement. Now, cognitive RPA is about now combining some of the AI technologies like natural language processing that we've got coming up next, natural language generation, and speech recognition. So imagine going into the office in the morning, going into Skype for Business, or having a little Alexa, it's a bit far out, right? Alexa or Google Home in the office and saying, hey Google, what is my revenue for the month? Or, hey Google, why is the sales forecast in the UAE down for this particular product? Right? And having an answer come back. That is more about robotic cognitive automation, and it's a convergence. It absolutely is a convergence of technologies. So NLP, as Rajiv explained already, that is about processing text, making meaningful understanding in a machine of text. Right, so think Siri, as was explained already. Natural language generation. Who here has come across natural language generation? Just one person. Who here has watched a game of cricket? Are you kidding me? Who here has watched a game of cricket, guys? Okay, that's more like it. All right, there we go. So if you have seen the text that scrolls along the bottom of your screens when you're watching a cricket game, somebody's not, we're not got a team of people in the stadium typing those things out. That is natural language generation. It's looking at data that is coming off the field in real time and is generating the statistics. No one is sitting there pushing a button to say, oh, this person has got a run, this person is out, or this person just scored a 6. That's not how it works in 2019. So natural language generation is about now applying that in our profession by looking at data sets that we have, for example, management reports, for example, P&Ls, other sources of data, and then generating textual commentary on top of that. So how many of you have had to add comments to a budget? A lot of people, right? Now imagine if that was automated. Right? Now how do these machines get the insight on how to generate that text? That is part of machine learning. So you feed it enough commentary, it'll understand what to do in the future. That's something that we're currently working on at the firm. Lastly, we have speech recognition. I think this is probably the one that's most familiar to everyone. You speak to Siri, it does speech recognition, it understands your voice and converts it into text. Now, generating meaning from that speech recognition, that is where natural language processing comes in, and then communicating back to you is where natural language generation comes in. So hopefully that's a quick overview of the cognitive technologies. Now, it's pretty abstract, right? I've talked to you about the tech, but I want to talk to you about something that I'm very passionate about. It's the reporting ritual. So when you say the word reporting, what do you think of? You think of the binders full of spreadsheets. You've got the charts, you've got the footnotes. These are all things that come to mind. Or maybe it's the conference rooms like here, where you've got executives grinding through slide presentations, and behind it all, there's an army of finance people who've been working weeks to pull it all together. This ritual continues month on month, year on year on year, right? That is why it is a ritual. In the best of all the worlds, this ritual delivers reports with changing needs of the business. But that rarely seems to happen. I mean, when was the last time you changed the structure of your reports based on an external factor? So unless the CFO, unless management say, oh, we want to see something different, you just present the same thing. I can see some people smiling. You can tell that that's something you've been doing, right? Okay, I've got some nodding heads at the back. So when we surveyed 600 CFOs about how their finance team spent time versus where they would want to spend time, this was the results. So the gray bars here is current time that is currently being spent. The green bar is where finance professionals like yourselves would like to spend their time. So let's look at graph one. Graph one is how many finance professionals want to create and update reports? Doesn't seem like many of you want to do reporting. Many of you don't want to be creating and updating reports. Why is this? Does anyone in the audience have an idea? Why is it not exciting for you guys to create, copy and paste into reports?
Because it's the past.
It's the past. Okay. Anybody else?
It's mechanical, it's repetitive.
It's the past, it's mechanical, it's repetitive, it's not fun. Right? It's boring. And I have to do it every month. It's a absolutely it's a ritual. But that is where most people are spending a lot of their time, 50%. Then, when we talk about analyzing and interpreting information, this is where people are still spending a lot of time, and likewise, they're not getting enough time. There's still a delta between what they'd like to be doing and what they're actually doing. What finance professionals would actually like to be doing, and this is me telling you, is interacting and communicating with the business. So 69%. Right? But you only get 18% of the time is spent on interacting and communicating with the business. Right? Now, I did this survey, so do you guys agree with this? Does anyone disagree with this? That's a dangerous thing to say in a room full of 150 people, right? No, okay. So, the stats speak for themselves, right? And part of this is obviously the strategy of me telling you that 600 CFOs have already participated in this, and so who are we to disagree? But I think the important thing here is, there is a fundamental mismatch between what we do today and what we want to do, right? And this is where my next client, I'm going to take you through a story of a client that I worked on, where we looked at this and we said, we're not going to accept this anymore, we're going to change it. So here is an applied AI for a reporting scenario. This is something I did for a $230 billion revenue business. There's only a few that are out there. It's one of the largest oil and gas businesses out there. And they currently have 14,500 FTEs in global business shared services. So they're a large size global shared services business, right? In that again. And they currently service this team, 80% of this team is just servicing reports. They get a request from business, they get a request from finance, they have to go into the source systems, they pull together a PowerPoint, and they send it back out. That's their job. More than 10,000 people doing that. That just sounds ludicrous to me, right? Just literally copying and pasting from one place to another. So, let me take you through what the workflow was. So, this team was 18 by 6. 18 by 6 means they were available 18 hours a day, right? 6 days a week, right? And why are they 18 hours and 6 days a week? Well, that's because they're located a little bit across the world, right? So what would happen? An email would come in to the finance team. An email would come into a common inbox, right? Meaningful response would be dependent on the workload of the team, so there'd be a backlog, right? If there was missing information and clarifications, this is every shared service center person's dream. I can just go back and say, oh, by the way, I need these 10 extra things. Can you fill out this form for me? Right? That's great service for our business users, right? That's my English sarcasm coming across. It's not. Right? And obviously, the availability was dependent on the workforce and locale and hours. So that was just sending an email to the users. 48 hours is how long it normally took, and this is I would say, a leading edge organization. 48 hours was the request response time. Right? They'd process the request, they'd go off, they'd look into the ERPs, they had 14 data warehouses globally, they had over 8 petabytes of data that they had to look through, large organization. Right? They would produce exclusively PowerPoints in the corporate color scheme, and they'd respond back. Right? So you get an email back. Now, as a business person, it's fantastic. 48 hours. What you don't hear is that by the time the data got back to the individual who had requested it, the data was out of date. So what we implemented was a very simple technology. It's called chatbots. I'm sure you've all come across using chatbots before. Who hasn't heard of chatbots? Everybody's heard of chatbots. And I was surprised when I came to the Middle East, I think here in the Middle East we're actually a little bit more advanced when it comes to the implementation of chatbots. I see a lot of them everywhere. But the key thing with chatbots is it's very easy to build a bad chatbot. It's difficult to build a good chatbot, right? And what we did was we spent about 3 weeks with this client looking at the types of requests that came in, the types of emails that would come in, and we basically built a fancy chatbot. And off the back of that chatbot, we also built an RPA engine, a robotic process engine, that would take the requests from that chatbot and then would execute specific things in the source systems, in ERPs, in their HR systems, in their EPOS systems, in other systems. And we went from looking at a 48-hour response time to a less than 5 minutes response time. Okay? And this was a reasonable pilot. We looked at about 7 areas of the business. There's about 16 areas. Obviously, this is a cognitive solution, so it's available 24/7. One of the key things here is that a lot of the time spent in the business services for finance was clarification, right? So somebody would say to the finance team, can you send me the latest report for the UK? I mean, what does that mean? The latest report, actuals, budget, variance analysis, was it the P&L, was it product analysis? All these questions, you have to ask. The chatbot, the benefit of the chatbot is in real time you can go back and look at that request and say, this request is incomplete. Let me ask you, what are the other things that I need in order to actually fulfill that request? Right, so a lot of that time was then reduced. So that was one of the benefits. And obviously the other benefit is that we cut a significant amount of the workload from the global business services. Now this is where you have to be very sensitive as folks in finance and folks who use shared services around what the impact is of some of the technologies that we're implementing. So this particular technology does have the ability to disrupt people's jobs. So when we're talking to clients and we're talking to our colleagues about how to implement these technologies, we have to be very clear on what the change management process is around the implementation. Right? And I can't say to you that we were fully successful in managing the change, because that was something that our client was pretty keen on running themselves. However, I'm pretty sure that about 60% of those FTEs were redeployed somewhere else. Right? But at the end of the day, this organization was a profit-seeking organization, and they saw an opportunity to reduce costs through the implementation of technology. Now, your job is to make sure you're not part of that team getting cut. You are part of the team that is doing implementations, that's adding value, being redeployed. Right? That's why I'm telling you the story. This is a very interesting case study. So, I got 5 more minutes. Wow, okay, well, 5 more minutes. I've got a load of case studies to go through. So this is the cognitive AI in practice. I would ask Nancy, what's the FY year 18 year-to-date spend on this project? Nancy would come back with the numbers. CFO could also ask Nancy, show me the computer and networking equipment budget for FY18, which compromises the project Jaguar for the same period. She would come back with the charts in a PDF format, right? Then the CFO would say, well, I've got to say, this Nancy guy, a little bit of a miscommunication maybe in the guy and Nancy, but it's just the coolest thing I've ever seen. Can he also deliver the Europe budgets, actuals versus budget drill down that we talked about? Well, it'll be in your inbox in 5 minutes. This is the type of business partnering that we need to move to, right? Where we're getting away, building reports and sending reports. Okay. So I'm going to crack on through this quite quickly. Machine learning. Let's talk about machine learning, right? This is cool stuff. So machine learning is about algorithms. I'm going to read from the slide here because this has been very carefully put together. Algorithms that identify underlying rules based on input data, clean input data, and write the required code to solve a given problem. So AI today is not general purpose. So you don't have AI machines running around solving all sorts of problems. AI currently is based on the data that we feed it. Like a small child, we have to be careful. What is the data that we're feeding it? Right? We don't go to a small child and we go with a dictionary and say, learn English. We read them stories. Right? It's experiential. And that's the same way that we teach AI. We train it. It picks up the same biases that we introduce in the training data. So we teach it by training it, learning based on historical data, historical results, and that generates the machine learning models. Then we apply those models. When there's new data, unknown data, that is insight. Okay. So how have we currently used machine learning to help finance, to help CFOs? Well, we help them with planning and forecasting. Obviously, you've got algorithmic forecasting. We help them with data processing and data mining. We help them with transaction processing, like posting journals, fully automated journal posting. That's something that we did for a UK client. Data quality improvement. I've got a case study coming on that in a few minutes. Decision making, performance, and optimization. So the latest trend today is automated RPA. So we don't have to sit there looking at the processes and doing process analysis and then building the RPA. Now, we release a bot, a cognitive bot, into the workflow, into your process. It mines your process, it sees where time is being spent, it builds the bot on the fly. Builds that RPA on the fly. That's the latest that we see in this space. And obviously it crosses a number of different areas, so controlling, decision support, accounting, treasury, risk management, and of course across all of the other CFO functions as well. So machine learning is about the crystal ball, right? So here's two case studies and then I am going to close. So who here has issues with data quality within their organization? Wow, that's a lot. So this is a case study that I worked in a couple of years back. This is a large client, FTSE 100 client, operates in 80 companies, $22 billion in revenue. They had a finance function where they would capture costs across 6 categories, marketing costs, people costs, contract and consulting costs, travel and expense costs, facilities management costs, real estate costs, IT costs, all the standard stuff. Across 10 markets, they would do this cost analysis. 35% of that spend was incorrectly classified in SAP. So some costs could be in marketing, some costs could be in T&E, and it's completely wrong. What did this mean? This meant that this client couldn't execute the cost-saving program that they wanted to execute. They couldn't forecast properly. They couldn't budget properly. They couldn't make decisions properly. Right? They even tried an expensive manual reconciliation and reallocation exercise. They got 5 FTEs for 6 months, and they managed to reclassify one cost category for 1 month. Right? Think about the lag of that. So reallocating the $2 billion of costs would take 8,000 years for a team of those 5 people to complete. Does anyone know what this picture is? I know it's not a very good one. This is a monolith and there's monkeys around this. I'll be really impressed if somebody knows which movie this is taken from. It's from a science fiction movie, a very old one. Space Odyssey. Very good. This is from Arthur C. Clarke's 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is the monolith scene. And in this scene, I don't like to refer to clients as the monkeys, but early humans, they have a light bulb moment, right? They touch this monolith and they realize they have an AI moment. They realize they can pick up something and hit another monkey over the head, and that's a weapon, right? So this client had this AI moment when we told them that we could connect to those 5 SAP systems that they have. We could look at over 2 billion SAP transactions. We could look at over 250 SAP variables, 6 drivers for variations, and we could reallocate those costs in 30 minutes with a 95% confidence interval. Right? And actually, unfortunately, at the back, you probably can't see, but the table that we have here in the middle is the original SAP data and the predicted data. Right? I know I can see, I'm going to get told off in a minute. So I have just one last case study, okay? My client, they wanted to predict the future, right? So in 5 weeks, we put in an analytics project to look at working capital, to look at receivables, to look at payment incentive simulations. We decided that that was insufficient. I wanted to give them a DeLorean, right? A time machine with a flux capacitor. Right? So instead of developing working capital benchmarking, within 9 weeks, we developed a predictive model using internal and external data sources. And actually, we decided, we were able to predict customer payment behavior to 95% confidence levels. And this was a tool that their credit management team were able to use using existing data that they had. This was just about unlocking. It doesn't have to take long, just 9 weeks. So, I've totally cut that case study from 5 minutes to about 3 seconds, right? So if you do want to know about these case studies in a bit more detail, come and speak to me, I'll be around. So what's next? This is just the tip of the iceberg. This is way too small for you to see, but there's basically about 40 use cases that I've collected that I wanted to share with you today. I can't share them all with you, but I can certainly showcase to you that there is a lot of effort that's been put into this place. And you're not necessarily going first. There are other clients globally already doing this, but I would encourage you all, if you're not already involved in these activities, to try and get yourself involved in these activities. It's a great way to have some fun, but also to reinsure your roles. And I'm going to skip over the last. So, where to start? Well, lifelong lessons. Let's learn more. Build a list of things that you want to do within your organization. Identify pilots. No one is coming at this from a big bang. That's very non-millennial to do a big bang. Millennials are all about doing these pilots and building on pilots. And then once you've identified what works, scale it. Right? I think that's the method of the madness. And I think just to close up, there's 2 quotes. One is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We already heard something similar. Does anyone know who said that?
Einstein.
That was Einstein. It was also re-quoted in a fantastic game called Far Cry 5 by the protagonist in that game. But also, Einstein was not necessarily the first person to come up with that. Henry Ford also said something quite similar. Does anyone remember what Henry Ford said? Henry Ford said, if you put the same ingredients in, you get a result. If you put the same ingredients again, you get the same result. It's very similar to what Einstein said. Now, these are people talking about, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, and they were talking about doing things differently, handling disruption. So I'm going to close by saying that are you going to do the same thing again? The age of width is already here. If you do the same thing as you did 5 years ago, you're going to get the same result. Please don't be part of that group. Please come into the age of width with me and with your other colleagues. Thank you very much.
All right, guys, be conscious of time as well, and some of you might be getting a little hungry as well. Thank you so much, Rick, for that. Before we go for the break, so the way we're going to do this is for the sake of time. We're not going to do a debriefing activity now. I'm going to give you a couple of questions to think about at the break, which will be a perfect segue into what my piece of the presentation will be after you guys come back. We are honored to have Mr. Ahmed Amjad Ali with us, the Counsel General. He's here for a little bit, so we're going to have him come up on stage. And obviously, Dr. Ikram is with us. He's a very famous figure. I keep seeing him in different events. all over Dubai from PAD, of course, they'll be here. And a big thank you to them. We're going to have them come up on stage in about 30 seconds to give a kind of a recognition. The Council General maybe will say a few words as well. Also, while we're here, I'd also like to thank all of you for taking the time to come out and see us. While it shows this idea of lifelong learning, that you're committed to this, I know you're also interested in some networking opportunities as well. Please, at the break, which we'll make it a little bit shorter, please, 15 minutes, just for the sake of time, do take the time to kind of talk to somebody you don't know, and don't keep talking to somebody you already know. That's not the point, right? Somebody you don't know, and get to know a little bit about them. I'll give you a question to think about. But before I give you that question, may I please have a round of applause and ask Mr. Ahmed Jalali and Dr. Ikram to please come up on stage. Fine if you want to get that shield or something, and I'll just have say a few words.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Office bearers of ICAP, ladies and gentlemen, assalamu alaikum. It was quite interesting to hear what the presenters were saying. I'm not from a financial background, but a background of law, but for me also it was quite interesting. And I really enjoyed the presentation, especially of Mr. Amin. And this is something what is coming up in the present scenario. Everything is changing towards technology, and I think it's really good for all of you to go into these, because when you represent, you don't represent only your companies, you represent a country which is Pakistan as well. So thank you for inviting me. I remember when I joined 8 months back, ICAP's function was the first I attended, and here I am again. So thank you very much. Good luck to you all, and God bless you all.
From that, to hand over the recognition and participation. You take a picture later as well. Fantastic, guys. Thank you so much. Just before we go on the break, 30 seconds. Here's what I'd love for you guys to talk about at the break, if nothing else. I'd love for you guys to make a perfect segue into some of the things I'm going to speak to you about. We've got some hot and fresh out the kitchen research to share with you. No slides, just talking, just sharing with you some of the ideas around leadership and management. How many people have a team that they work with, or people that report to them? Raise a hand. How many people have kind of fantastic, brilliant? So we're in the right room. Love for you to have a conversation about what's evolved in leadership for you. So how are you managing people differently 5-10 years ago? What's changed about your leadership styles, if anything? Are you doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results? Definition of insanity. Or have you evolved? I'll get you guys to talk about that at the break. When you guys come back, we go deep dive into this idea of transformational leadership, big words to talk about how we're going to change the way we lead. 15 minutes, please. There's a break outside. Not Pakistan Standard Time, please. Regular, 15 minutes. We'll see you guys back in 15 minutes, please. Thank you.
ऐसी लोग ब्रेक पे ऐसी लोग
to be